For professional advice with a personal touch, consult F.L. Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Good evening and welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by F.L. Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with F.L. Fuller Landau's Michael Newton, who is filling in for Josh Miller tonight. Michael, welcome back.
Hey Dan, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Your partner Josh is on, I guess, what is now becoming a biannual trip to Hong Kong?
Well, it's supposed to be annual. Every once in a while, he makes it a biannual. But yeah, he's been doing this for a number of years, and he gets a little feel for what's going on between the Canadian and the market in China. It's a very interesting perspective.
A lot of talk now about free trade agreements. Where do we stand in terms of our relationship, you think, with China in the years to come?
Well, I think China's got multiple issues to deal with. I mean, transparency is still going to be a major problem within China. Hong Kong, pretty much a non-issue. But once you hit mainland China, you're going to end up with a very different way of doing things. And I think the lesser of the concerns, unfortunately, will be the Canada-China relations. Probably a little more politically driven is going to be the U.S.-China relations over the next little while.
And we'll get some news from Josh when he gets back next week, and we'll find out how productive his trip was and what kind of issues came up as well. Today on the program, we're going to talk about digitizing, and this is getting to the point where a lot of big organizations now have to go digital, and there are businesses that serve that. So we'll talk to Malcolm DeSouza and Mel Squires of DocuPlus in a little bit.
Yep, definitely. The whole push of trying to go paperless as much as possible sounds a lot easier than it really is, especially when you start getting into professional firms like accountants and lawyers, and the whole discussion of what stands true as a true document once you've PDF'd it.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have a lot of documents over at the office.
Yeah, and in a few other places.
Mm-hmm. So they are on the way. Plus, we'll talk about HR towards the end of the show as well, human resources. But first, as usual, some entrepreneurial news of the week. And the big story today, of course, is the fact that it's Cyber Monday, this huge pre-holiday shopping blitz. Is this the reality of the way we're going to shop in the modern age, Michael? Do you think this is Cyber Monday is here to stay as we have these little bursts of shopping activity online?
Well, Cyber Monday obviously being a fall off of good old Black Friday, and I think the funny thing is it's no longer confined to Friday and Monday. It seems to find itself at least a week in advance, or seems to almost start once Halloween is done and you kick in. And there's no doubt that you look at this and you say, what are the effects on big businesses versus small business? And obviously on the small business, very different. Large businesses are trying to clear out inventory. They're trying to make room for some more Christmas goods. They're trying to move some product that may not be moving between now and the next little while. Not a luxury that a lot of smaller businesses really have, to blow stuff out at cost just to move it and turn it into cash flow. Unfortunately, that's the pressure. And let's face it, the marketing that comes with Cyber Monday or Black Friday, for that matter, is massive. If you look at the number of emails that I've received from U.S. retailers and Canadian retailers in the last week, there's no way small business can keep up with that kind of massive exposure.
That was my next question. I mean, is there a way for small and medium-sized businesses to make a dent on Cyber Monday, or is this really a day for the big players?
Well, the big players are certainly going to have the lineups, around the door, around the block, trying to get people to come in, and they're going to use a lot of loss leaders to move inventory. I think it's a much harder time for the small businesses. The only good product or the good byproduct of the exercise, is the ability to get a little bit of buzz going for people to shop. So if you do have online and you have that ability, then the likelihood is you might get a few more people, a little more traffic than you normally would on Monday. Do I think it's going to make a difference in your annual sales? Probably not.
So try to create something viral that can maybe compete for attention with a big business.
Yeah, it's about having the support there as well. So if somebody's going to look online for, I don't know, they're going to look at Zales or K's in the U.S. for diamonds, and they got the ability to look locally for something that they don't have to pay duty and import and tax and everything else that comes with it. Maybe you can make a bit of a dent, but you're certainly not going to get hundreds and thousands or millions of people traipsing to your website if you're a small business on Cyber Monday.
The Globe and Mail reporting that Concordia here, the GMSB, John Molson School of Business, will offer a course on taking over an existing business, which is pretty interesting. Is this something that you think should be taught in schools? And if you were the instructor, what would be some of the key chapters in that course?
Oh, 100%. I think this is something that everybody needs to have an exposure to in business school. A lot of times that you target the wrong business. So it's one thing to say I'm taking over a business. Excuse me. It's a completely different thing to find the right business and go at it from the right angle. I mean, we spend a lot of time and a lot of speaking on the due diligence process, finding the right business, making sure that the business that you're looking at makes sense. The due diligence, how do you go about doing a due diligence? Nice to say you've got a checklist, but there still has to be some kind of basis to what you're looking at, and whether you're buying them for synergies, whether you're buying them for geographical reasons, whether you're buying them for a process, whether you're just looking to make a dent in a different market. There are all different reasons to be acquiring a business, and I think there's a lot of people out there that jump into the entrepreneurial side of buying a business and realize they're a little bit too deep once they start, or have gone in the wrong direction.
How do you combat the sort of under new management problem? What if you don't do things quite like the successful entrepreneur who preceded you did? I mean, how do you sort of make sure that you keep the essence of the business and make sure the customers stay?
I think it depends on what your purpose is for doing the acquisition to begin with. I mean, if you're looking at adding a product line to an existing group of products, very different than taking over a service business where, the knowledge base resides in somebody's head. So, again, it's a function of what am I taking over? Why am I taking over? Have I spent enough time thinking about it, as opposed to waking up one morning and say, hey, today I'm going to go buy a business. What's for sale? I know guys that'll spend 2, 3, 4 years looking for a business. You also know other guys that are in business that are looking to add on that will move much quicker.
Interesting piece in the Globe and Mail about a phenomenon that they call the psychopath in the corner office. What happens if you happen to be an unfortunate soul who's working under someone who's very tough? And this letter from Rebecca in Toronto reads, I finally made it to VP, but turns out my new boss is a psychopath. He's charming and well put together, but he enjoys tormenting us with mind games and playing us off one another. How do you deal with a boss who makes, I guess, your day-to-day a bit torturous?
First of all, I'd like to correct that. I'm not in the corner office. I'm in the middle office. Second of all, it's not it's psychopath. It's sociopath. Look, I mean, there's no doubt that the dealing with the boss that's going to playing the games. I mean, I think we spend a lot of time learning how to deal with the people below us, and very little time being spent on how to deal with the people above us. And I have to say that there's an awful lot of good literature out there that'll help you how to manage your boss. And those are the types of things you should be looking at. I mean, I am reading regularly, how to work with toxic colleagues, or, how to deal with the psychology aspect. I'm a firm believer in body language. Learn to understand the body language. You may be saying X, but you may actually be saying Y. So there's a whole bunch of aspects that I think that the individuals that are working for somebody may want to be doing their own homework on. There's no doubt that, that the proverbial person in the corner office, it's their business. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you're going to have to learn to accommodate and work with the way they are. It doesn't mean that you accept certain things that are unacceptable. But the reality is you're still signing your paycheck. And I think you have an obligation to understand him or her as much as they have an obligation to understand you.
Those managers do have to manipulate, of course, their employees and keep certain strategies secret and deploy resources a certain way. When does that cross the line between, managing and manipulating or creating a tense atmosphere?
Well, I think part of this is a whole discussion of transparency, and certainly the old school is not transparent. The new school really pushing to try and be as transparent as possible. The reality is you can't give everybody every strategic decision at the end of the day for a number of reasons. One being, well, maybe somebody's not going to be here next week. Do you really want them having all of that intel? And I think the other side of it is, my definition of management is getting somebody to do something they didn't want to do without them knowing they're actually doing it. So, the reality is mind games are all going to be part of it, because the direction that you want to go with your business, you may not have everybody with the same buy-in level. Okay, and if everybody had the same passion, energy, and intensity, I'm not talking about the psychopath. I'm talking the general, well-intentioned boss. Not everybody's going to have that same motivation, and sometimes you have to do what you have to do.
Today's Entrepreneur on CJAD 800. Coming up, we'll talk to Mel Squires and Malcolm DeSouza of DocuPlus, and we'll talk HR as well later in the program.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL's Michael Newton filling in for Josh Miller tonight. This evening, let's welcome Malcolm DeSouza and Mel Squires of DocuPlus. Gentlemen, welcome to today's Entrepreneur.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Dan. It's great being here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Our pleasure. So first, easiest question, what is DocuPlus? Tell us about your business.
Long story short, DocuPlus, we help law firms and businesses streamline processes and reduce costs by helping them move from paper to digital and providing them enhanced ways of managing even litigation through some of the technology platforms we have in a hosted environment.
Yeah, they're doing some work for us as well. So you got to practice what you preach to a certain degree. The reality of trying to push our world, especially in the professional firms, into the digital age is a little slow at times. But there's no doubt that the volume of paper that's being handled by the legal and the accounting and other businesses is phenomenal, and we have to find a way to get through that. I mean, we went through a period where we did a count in October to determine the number of number of uses along the way, and we had 87,000 uses in the month of October between paper and scan and everything else. So there are, this is an astronomical amount of investment up front, but for a long-term savvy.
So between the 80s or 90s when things started to become computerized and today, I mean, are we seeing the emergence of businesses like yours that are based only in I guess in that transition? How much longer will it take, do you think, for businesses to completely digitize?
I think we're still a long way away. Paper is still quite intensive in the market, especially in the accounting world and the legal world where they're still producing a lot of paper. There is a lot of digital obviously being created, and hence the transition of our business from a paper environment where we started on the copying and printing side, and though we still do it, have transitioned, I should say, towards the digitalization and the uniqueness of the process to be able to not just digitize documents, but allow you to legally destroy them thereafter because of the process we've taken to follow certain rules and regulations of the laws that are out there.
Back in the 80s, we always all heard about the paperless office, but here we are, 2016, and we are still a long way from there. And every day I walk in and I see 100 or so boxes that we just received from Fuller Landau to scan. So that represents 100 of probably millions that are out there still to be done. So we're a long way, but part of the reason we're still a long way that it's change for business, and that's never easy. We're trying to make it easier for everybody. But until you get to that point, you still have to go, and take the time to do it.
But you also have to recognize at the end of the day, we're not just talking about digitization of documents. You're talking about a whole document management system, right? So, that whole area where it's nice to say somebody's scanning in and, they wave goodbye when they're finished their job and those hundreds of boxes have now been tossed out. The reality is you're creating a whole different wave where, I started in Fuller in 89 and, you had 2-3 people working in the filing room and, every time you needed something, you signed it in and signed it out like going to the library. Well, the reality is you still need those people. They're just very different people in document management in terms of, God forbid we allow people in our office to actually store things themselves electronically. We'd never find them.
No, it's a needle in a haystack, right?
100%.
So it's not just getting them in, it's how to find them. And you need professionals to be able to make sure that it's structured correctly, because at the end of the day, if you don't know what you're doing, then it's really easy to get it in, but good luck finding it. And when you need it, it's critical.
How did the business come about and how do you market it? We'll get into that with Malcolm and Mel in just a moment on today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
We are with Malcolm DeSouza and Mel Squires of DocuPlus, and of course, Josh Miller is off, and so Michael Newton from Fuller Landau is filling in tonight. First, let's start with Mel. Can you give us some history on the business? This actually has roots in a previous business.
It is. I was president of Icon Office Solutions Quebec Atlantic Marketplace in 2005. We had just been awarded the Marketplace of the Year in 2003 out of 72 marketplaces. Things were rolling along terrifically, And then I got the news. I was the first person to get the news in a company of 38,000 employees worldwide that Icon had decided to restructure. And basically, Quebec Atlantic was going to disappear from a management perspective, and all the management of Icon Office Solutions for that part of the country plus Ontario was going to be done out of Toronto. They asked me to stay on board as a VP of Business Development for Canada. I decided after 3 days of thinking about it not to, because there was no way, they did not give me any concept or idea of how Toronto was going to handle our French Canadian clients. So I decided to retire at that time. I knew I had a great severance package and the timing was right. And Malcolm was my employee for over 10 years, did a terrific job. And I'll let him tell the rest of the story because it's a pretty interesting David and Goliath.
Yeah, so after Mel retired, I stuck it out running the operations for Quebec Atlantic and didn't see the vision that the folks out of Toronto did, which was to manage the Quebec marketplace with unilingual only, and gave it 3 months of a chance and went back to them and told them this is not working. Customers were complaining, employees were unhappy. They didn't see it the same direction, and I opted to pack up and resign and found my own company in DocuPlus at that point, and literally opened up down the hall in a similar business with a different vision of building a business supported by Quebec people to be able to support our clients and our employees and deliver what they expected. So that's the story of sort of David versus Goliath, and like Mel said, it was challenging. We went through some struggles, but at the outcome, I think we did the right thing by sticking to our guns.
Coming up, we'll talk more about marketing and about describing some of the complicated services that you offer, and how big a business this is going to become in the next few years. We're talking with Malcolm DeSouza and Mel Squires from DocuPlus. We'll talk about HR a little bit later in the program as well.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, presented by FL, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, and sitting in for Josh Miller this week is Michael Newton. So far, so good, Michael?
We're doing well as always, Dan. Thanks.
Excellent. And Mel Squires and Malcolm DeSouza from DocuPlus with us today. And let's talk a bit. We'll talk a bit about marketing in a second. But first, more on the establishment of this business, Malcolm. And what about the early goings? You left another company. There was lawsuits there. As it turns out, you did win all of them, but it was a very costly proposition to sort of go out on your own. Tell us about the stressors there and how you overcame them.
Absolutely. To some degree, it was a calculated risk, and we knew what we were getting into. Probably not to the financial extent that it was, having to defend ourselves, myself and my business partners, as well as some of the employees. But at the end, we had times when we thought about calling it quits and wrapping it up, and then we realized that there was a reason we did this, and we stood our ground, and we defended ourselves and our employees. And I think at the end of the day, it was the right decision. And till today, we still have those employees who've stuck by us and are loyal for that reason. And our customers, too, saw what we had to do. So I think it goes without saying that when you do the right thing, it pays dividends.
Mm-hmm.
Although I had retired at that time, I did continue supporting Malcolm and the team. And what was interesting, I guess, was that I would provide advice when requested and even when not requested. And Malcolm stayed very focused on the long-term goal, no matter what came in his way, no matter what lawsuit came up, what challenge came up, what partnership issue came up. He focused on the long-term goal, and that, I think, is one of the main reasons why he and DocuPlus and the team are successful.
Yeah, I think the one thing that people don't realize, especially when they break off from an existing entity, is what exactly is going to be the cost, but not necessarily just on the financial side, the time consumption, the allocation or the dedication to fight lawsuits, non-competes, non-solicits, and everything else that comes with it. And, there's a reason we put those in place as business owners to avoid people from leaving. But the courts have certainly, varied over years in terms of what they deem to be an acceptable enforceable non-compete or a non-solicit. And, if you are looking at going out on your own, make sure you take that into account, because it's one thing to have deep pockets and pay all the bills. It's another thing to be bothered on a regular basis and disrupted in which you're trying to get off the ground.
Yeah, it's a distraction, right? So I think what Mike said is do your homework, do your due diligence, and get some advice prior to venturing into something, just so you know what you're getting yourself into. Because once you're in it, sometimes it's too late. But again, it's like keeping your eye on the focus.
It's like trying to move your car with the Denver boot on. It's not always that easy. So,
have you ever had one?
No, I haven't.
So not only did you have those legal challenges at the beginning, but you also still had a competitor, a very big multinational to go up against. So how did you distinguish yourself from that competitor?
Absolutely. I mean, most of our competitors are large entities. And in order to do that, we did two things. One, we created strategic alliances with some other vendors out there. We knew what we were great at, which was the service model, serving clients, taking care of employees, and building processes. But we partnered with folks on the technology side, folks like Canon Canada, and a Quebec-based company as well by the name of Cloud Technologies, and most recently an Australian-based company called EDT. And through these strategic partnerships, it allowed us to focus on what we do great, allow them to build platforms that we could work with and integrate into our processes in order to offer a unique solution to our clients. And when I say unique, not just to be able to allow clients on the digitization to destroy original documents, because we could guarantee the ironclad probative value of those new images, but also a model that's in the cloud, so a SaaS model where they pay as they go for what they need and don't need to invest in infrastructure costs and personnel and support structure. So we took the burden upon ourselves with these partners and then offered to our clients as a service, as a solution.
EDT is one of our latest solutions for litigation support, and we recently held a conference here in Montreal, and one of our first installs made the comment, Malcolm, I think you've got her exact quote pretty well, but I think it's important to mention because law firms, again, the mid-size and the smaller ones, want to have the same access to all the resources of the larger ones. Through the cloud, we can give them that on a pay-as-you-go basis. And I believe that's a major future for some of the professional firms in the city and around the country as well.
Yeah, what she said was that this solution offered her access to her documents anywhere, anytime, and tripled her productivity without having to invest in technology or a structure that she had in a previous law firm where she was at. So I think it goes without saying is that's what clients today are looking for, is ease of access, being able to turn around and get something set up almost instantaneously, and we were able to do that in 5 days or less and have her case up and running. So that's what we're trying to provide to our clients in uniqueness.
Yeah, I think you look at the service offerings. I mean, there's obviously you can do a great job, but you also got to start getting the exposure, right? So at the end of the day, you've got to get either the organic growth or you're going to grow by acquisitions. I think something you've done on both sides.
Absolutely.
And are continuing to explore, and I think especially in a spin-off case where you're starting up like that, sometimes the ability to try and go out and find either a competitor that may be languishing somewhere in order to kind of hit the ground running in another city is key, and I think that's part of that strategic direction as to where you're going.
Well, Fuller has certainly been helping us out tremendously on the acquisition side. One completed, working on a couple now, and we hope to get those accomplished in the near future as well.
Perfect. The $20 is coming after for the
I
plug.
know.
Thank you.
No
Tell us about your experience acquiring similar companies. What are you looking for when you are growing?
Synergies. We're looking to grow the business. Obviously, it started here in Montreal and Quebec. We want to grow to a national level and even get ourselves into the United States. We've got a vision of not just growing organically, like Mike referred to, but growing through acquisition. Most recently, we did an acquisition in Ottawa. We're working in a couple right now in Ontario and on the U.S. side as well. And we're looking for synergies. We're looking for people who are owners of businesses with similar visions, cultures, and business ethics. So, I mean, it needs to be a fit for us because it is a challenge once you do an acquisition and try and integrate that within your own business. So if you can find business partners or business owners that have that same vision and culture, it makes it that much more simplified in the integration process.
At the end of the day, we are in the service business, so anybody that we acquire, we need to make sure that they share the same service mentality that we do. Not all, you can have great employees, but not all great employees share a service mentality, and that's very, very important to us.
We're going to talk about HR in a couple of minutes. How have you tried to not only assemble a team but to integrate new members of that team? And what is the cohesive vision that you try to impart on your employees?
Our vision for our employees is to be able to, customer first, obviously, take care of the clients, empower them to be able to make decisions for the client at any given time. Because not all our employees are located within our facility, we do place employees at our client locations. It becomes a little bit more challenging because they're not centralized. So we give them that empowerment. We also want them to be able to manage change. With technology and the way business is changing so rapidly, they need to be able to adapt. So providing them the training and the structure and the guidance by our team of operations managers, that's part of the way we've built our team and our reputation.
One of the challenges always, especially when you start to expand geographically, is that ability to have management on the ground. And it's nice to say you're going to go into Toronto or you're going to go into Ottawa or you're going to go into Vancouver. There's only so many hours in the day for somebody like Malcolm to actually be on the ground. So really, as you start to look, you're going to look at two aspects. You're going to look for somebody that may be languishing, may be in trouble, that you might get at a good discount, and then you're going to have to spend a little more time and energy or place somebody in it. And the other is a vibrant, ongoing business that has management on the ground that kind of facilitates and moves forward without him having to spend a huge amount of time in the plane, the train, and what is that, the old John Candy movie, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles? Yeah.
Story of my life.
Exactly.
Malcolm DeSouza and Mel Squires of DocuPlus, you guys are going to stick around, and we'll have your one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur later in the program. And coming up, we'll talk to Cristina Longo, HR advisor at FL, and we're going to talk about just that, merging teams and how to create a cohesive unit when you're having different cultures, different businesses all coming together under the same roof. So that is next.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Inspiring stories from outstanding business people, Dan Delmar and FL's Michael Newton in for Josh Miller this week. We're joined by Malcolm DeSouza and Mel Squires of DocuPlus. We'll have their one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur coming up in just a few minutes. But first, we're going to talk about HR and in particular how to bring forces from different companies, different organizations together cohesively and to move forward. And joining us is Cristina Longo, HR advisor at FL. Welcome to the show, Cristina.
Thank you.
So is it difficult, Mike, to start to bring in two different organizations and to merge them together, or is this process? What are some tips in your opinion to make this process easier?
It's broken down into three environments. I mean, first is once you've acquired or once you've identified the business, you got to go through the due diligence angle. So of all the various moving parts of the due diligence, one of them is going to be the HR component for fit and people and policy and a whole bunch of things. That, in the grand scheme of things, really is the easy part, okay? Because that's kind of black and white, checklist, go through the exercise, do some interviews, walk out and go, yeah, they're good, or yeah, I don't know, okay? And somebody likely is going to turn around and go, well, it doesn't really matter because we want the sales or we want the geographic location, so make it work. Right? So somebody like me is going to turn to Cristina and go, okay, we're doing the deal whether you like it or not. Now find a way to integrate it. So you've got the next stage, which is really kind of that initial honeymoon of bringing them in. And, the whole exercise of what do you do once they've been advised that they're coming to join you. And I think that's really where, Cristina, you kind of got involved in the latest one that we did. We had a group that we closed in June on the acquisition. They joined us in September. So what did Cristina do for that, the 2-month period in between?
Right. Well, thank you, Mike. Well, first of all, we didn't wait till September when they actually joined us to get the process started. Once we found out about the acquisition, the due diligence happened. My goal was then to meet with each employee that we've acquired, have that interview with them, identify what their skill set are, what their background is, what are their concerns. That's very important. You want to know what their attitude is. Are they going to embrace the change? Are they going to resist the change? I think you want to know who your key players are, who are people who are going to be on your side and going to advocate the change to other employees. So I think that was very important. Also highlight all the employment conditions. So for example, if we are offering only 3 weeks vacation, but the acquiring company is only offering 2, you want to highlight all the differences, make sure that there's a synergy, make sure everyone's on board. So that's definitely important.
Yeah, the hard part, I think, for anybody that's doing the HR integration component is dealing with people like me. At the end of the day, I mean, the deal's the deal, right? I can see the long-term benefits. I can see everything else. So how do we piece it all together? How do you put the puzzle together? obviously any integration in any different business is going to have a different exercise. If I'm integrating, shop floor employees over, accountants or lawyers, there's a very different approach. And it's many cases, especially the accountants, the change is not a word they like to put in their vocabulary. So at the end of the day, it makes Christina's job that much more complicated. Once you get past that initial stage like you did, and then they hit the ground on September 6th when they joined us, now what do you go into?
Right. Well, first of all, I think what's important is to communicate from the beginning. So I think what we did a good job at is communicating to our employees and to the acquiring employees why the acquisition was happening, was going to be the impact. I think communication to all employees was key. So that once they actually started, people were all on board. Actually, once they started as well, what we did is we had a nice welcome lunch. So all employees together had a chance to meet each other, get to know each other better. It was a nice atmosphere, getting everyone together in the boardroom. At that point, we had already settled, okay, where are they going to be sitting, what their business cards are going to look like, what their titles are, what their departments. These are all things that we settled before they actually started. So a lot of that fear, that unknown was already settled. So when they started on their first day, it was a lot, okay, let's get to know each other better. Let's meet my new colleagues. And after, once they got to their workstations, then they were ready to start working.
Yeah, and you've got in the whole exercise, you've got somebody looking over your shoulder going, so how's this going? Are they ready to start working? Are they ready to start getting something done? Where's the chargeable time?
And my role, of course, was there to support them, to hear their concerns along the way for both our employees, our FL employees, because a lot of our FL employees were also nervous about how this was going to affect them. So on both ends, you don't only want to, worry too much about the employees who are being acquired, but also you can't forget about your current employees, since you want to know how they're going to embrace that as well, how it's going to affect their morale. So a lot of people were concerned with that. I think it's also managing both on both ends to create that harmony on all fronts, definitely.
More talk about HR plus Malcolm and Mel's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur. That's next.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Remaining moments with Malcolm DeSouza and Mel Squires of DocuPlus. We'll have the one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur in just a moment. But first, Cristina Longo, HR advisor at FL. We're talking about merging, bringing teams together. How long a process does this take usually? If you're merging or taking over a company, what's the ideal length of time to get all the employees in sync?
Definitely over a 24-month period between the moment that they start till they're fully integrated. One tip of advice I would give to HR, people out there who are managing acquisitions, is to get a chance where possible, if geographical location permits, is to actually meet with the acquired employees at least 1 month after they've started to get a feel of how well they're integrating, how their morale is. So definitely, that's one tip of advice I would have for other HR professionals out there.
And you mentioned earlier finding key employees that could be ambassadors for your
Definitely, whether it's at a management or even lower level, sometimes it doesn't have to be managers. Getting people who are on board, who are going to advocate it and definitely promote it.
Excellent. Thanks, Cristina.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Let's turn to Malcolm and Mel and ask them their one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur. Should we start with Malcolm?
Sure. Dan, I can say that, I've been fortunate enough to be surrounded by great people and gentlemen here with us, Mel, who's a great mentor to me. And one piece of advice that he instilled in me many years ago that stays true today was be true to myself, be honest, be ethical, stay focused, and always take care of my clients and my employees. And if I did that, the chances of success would always weigh in my favor every time. So that would be a piece of advice I'd give to anybody.
After that comment, dinner's got to be on me, I guess. What can I say? My one piece of advice, and I've had 50 years of business experience, listen to your customers. Find out what they're going through. Find out what their pain is. If you listen to your customers, they will always, or typically always, lead you down the right path. And that's why our brand is what it is today. And that's why some of the successes we've had, it's because we've listened and we've acted.
Mike, a quick takeaway from the show tonight?
As you listen to all the guests, and the thing that always comes forward to me is that from the entrepreneurial side, the key is always passion on what you do. You listen to these gentlemen talk about what they're doing. You listen to Cristina talk to me. There's that passionate side of the work that they're doing. And the other is, and this is where most people fall down, is execution. You got to get it done.
Thanks so much, Mike, and thanks for filling in for Josh this week.
It's always a pleasure once a year.
He'll be back next week on Today's Entrepreneur. Thanks to Cristina Longo, HR advisor at FL. Thanks, Cristina. Malcolm DeSouza and Mel Squires, of course, of DocuPlus. Really great story. Thanks so much for stopping by, guys.
Thanks,
you.
Dan. Appreciate it.
Next week on the program, this is going to be interesting. Rise Kombucha will be our profile on Today's Entrepreneur. The Night Side is next. Good night.